Good afternoon. Hey, my name is Steve Cloward. I am the Feel Great guy, and I'm excited to be here this afternoon to talk to you about insulin resistance and metabolic health. I'm going to give it a minute here to wait for a few folks to continue to join, and then we'll get started. Hey, folks, I'm going to do a little testing here while I wait for a couple more people to join. So if you'll bear with me a minute, just need to test something here. Anyway, folks, welcome. if you're over 40 and dealing with high blood pressure, stubborn weight, high blood sugar, low energy, diabetes or pre-diabetes, fatty liver, non-alcoholic fatty liver, weight stuck around the waist, stubborn belly fat, we're going to talk about what may be actually happening underneath all of that. And if you're joining us, welcome. My name is Steve Cloward, the Feel Great guy, and I'm here in Utah. Drop where you're watching from in the comments if you would. Love to see where folks are from. Well, a couple more are joining here. Appreciate you jumping on. Quick question. How many of you know somebody dealing with high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, or insulin resistance? Just drop a yes in the chat. Is there anybody over 50? When I learned about insulin resistance, it wasn't too long ago. I had never heard about it, but I was 57. I'm now 58. Just about a year and a half ago when I learned what insulin resistance was. So if you're over 50, I'd love to talk to you about insulin resistance and metabolic health. Again, my name is Steve Cloward, and I'm in Utah. Type in the chat where you're from. Before I get started, I want to tell you a little bit about where I was at, my situation, and kind of what's transpired since I learned about insulin resistance and what I was able to do naturally without extreme diet or exercise, just by simply taking a simple daily reset that I was introduced to. And at the time when I learned about insulin resistance, I was about 35 pounds overweight. I had skin tags. I had terrible sleep. I was getting up 2 to 3 times at least every night, occasionally 4, just to go to the bathroom. And that drove me nuts. So I had terrible sleep, which contributed to fatigue as well. But I was also fatigued simply because of insulin resistance and what that does that affects the body. My blood pressure was running 166 over 116. I had high cholesterol. So I had a whole array of problems. And if you can relate to that, put how many of health problems you can count that you have. At the time when I learned about insulin resistance, I was dealing with 7 different things. Other signs of insulin resistance, I'll actually put a slide up here that'll show you and give you an idea. These are all signs of insulin resistance. Belly fat, obesity, unexplained weight gain, tired after eating, that afternoon crash after lunch, fatigue or low endurance, cravings. Dark skin patches is a big one that I wasn't aware of. Those usually happen around the neck, the underarms, groin area, can happen on the knuckles, the elbows. Moody, irritable, anxiety, depression, memory issues, brain fog, struggle with memory problems, headaches, migraines, poor sleep issues, including sleep apnea, high blood pressure, PCOS and ED. Those are big ones. Type 2 and pre-diabetes, neuropathy. Got some amazing stories of people that had neuropathy who no longer have it. Inflammation usually comes from pain in the joints, swelling in the hands and feet, autoimmune disorders, inflammation, cardiovascular issues, high triglycerides, IBS, UTIs. You can see the list. If you've got any of those things, just count them and tell me how many of them you're dealing with. I'd be curious to know. Like I said, I was dealing with 7 of them, and that was quite a few. So let's jump back and let's start talking about where I was at. As I mentioned, I was overweight. You can see I was at 208 pounds, ended up dropping to 178. And I did that all without diet or exercise, which was phenomenal. I was grateful for that because I don't enjoy, frankly, if I'm being honest, I don't enjoy exercise. When I'm talking exercise, I'm not talking about walking or, I'm talking about higher endurance stuff, going to the gym, working out with weights, things like that. Do I feel better when I do it? Sure, I'd be lying if I said I didn't, but it's just something I never have enjoyed. So you can see what I was dealing with down there, all sorts of different problems. And the thing that blew me away when I learned about a simple daily reset that we'll talk about a little later is my cravings disappeared literally overnight. My energy increased dramatically overnight. When I say overnight, I'm talking 24 hours. But my daily routine, as embarrassing as it is to say, used to be I used to just go to Starbucks first thing in the morning, get a very sugary caramel macchiato, and that's what I did. And then on my way to work a couple hours later, when I say a couple hours later, that's because I was at Starbucks very early, usually by 6:30 at the latest. And then I would head to my office and grab a Dr. Pepper on my way in. And then probably have little snacks. I had some things in my drawer, usually some trail mix, things like that. But regardless, there's a lot of snacks we think are not so bad. Now, trail mix, a lot of them, the kind I was eating, didn't just have peanuts and raisins and almonds and sunflower seeds. There were some M&Ms in there. But no matter what the snacks are, even if they're, quote, healthy, it's still spiking our insulin. And the worst thing we can do is eat 3 times a day and then snack, even if it's 2 hours after you eat, then you have lunch, snack in the afternoon, then have dinner. Every time you're eating something, it's spiking insulin. If you wonder what that afternoon crash is, it's because you spiked your insulin when you eat and then you crash after that. But anyway, 5 days after I started this simple reset that I learned about from my son, I was shocked because on day 5, I didn't go to Starbucks, or I hadn't gone to Starbucks, I should say. From the day I started it through day 5, no Starbucks, no Dr. Peppers. Sugar cravings literally disappeared, and I was just blown away. I wasn't snacking at night and wasn't snacking during the day. And I was skipping breakfast because that's a huge thing. Intermittent fasting is a huge thing to improving metabolic health and insulin resistance. It gives the body time for the insulin to come down, stay down, so the body can heal and repair itself the way it's intended. And when you think about intermittent fasting, and we're talking a 16-8 eating window. So during 8 hours, the only time you would eat, and ideally you're only eating lunch and dinner. Or if you happen to work a graveyard shift, maybe it's dinner and breakfast, whatever. It's just in that 8-hour window. And eliminate snacking, grazing, whatever you want to call it, because that is having an impact on insulin resistance. What does insulin resistance impact? The things I've mentioned, some of this is going to probably shock you because what I've learned after day 5, when I experienced that, I was blown away because I didn't go into starting this protocol thinking I'm not going to drink caramel macchiatos or Dr. Peppers anymore, and I'm going to improve my uh, what I eat. I didn't do any of that. It just happened, and that's what blew me away. So today I'm going to go over really simple terms what insulin resistance is, why it matters, what drives it, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Because when you're insulin resistant, here's a list of some of the many health problems you might have. So when I experienced what I did, I wanted to learn more and figure out, wait a minute, what's going on here? So I first bought this book by Dr. Benjamin Bickman, Why We Get Sick. And at the very top, in the smaller print, it says the hidden epidemic at the root of most chronic disease. Everything you can see on that list, we have been taught that most of those things are chronic and that we'll be on medications, for the rest of our lives. Think about how messed up that is, because I don't know about you, unless it's something that really, really matters to me, I don't want to be on the membership program. And when you see your medical professional and you're talking about the symptom you're dealing with, in my case, let's say high blood pressure, my pre-diabetes. Well, he's writing me a note, if you know what I'm talking about, and sending me on my way. And so I can stop on the way home to pick up my Tic Tacs to manage those symptoms. That's it, manage. There's no discussion about figuring out what the root cause is. There's no discussion about nutrition, diet, and exercise, and how things I could be doing to improve my situation. They're not trained that way. And I'm not bashing on doctors here, and I'm not dogging them, but I believe 100% they're trained simply to do that. They're not trained to cure. A cured patient, cured individual impacts the big cheese that drives the big pharma machine that impacts a lot of things in this world. And so when you get down to the root cause and figure out what's really going on, then that's something they don't want us to learn or want us to deal with. So when I read this book and realized that the hidden epidemic at the root of chronic disease is insulin resistance, and started this simple daily reset, talked to a bunch of other people who had done it besides my son. That's how I learned about it. I saw him carrying around this bottle in my office and saw it on his desk for about a week. And then I asked him, what the hell is that? I just assumed it was like a protein drink or something. And when he told me, I was a little surprised, but I said, well, geez, I want to try it. Because as I mentioned, at 57, I had all those problems. And it was really impacting me, especially late afternoon, get home, have dinner. And then I was pretty much worthless at that point because of the way I felt in the evenings. And so, as I mentioned, I started it right away. And what happened was shocking. I've got a cabinet behind me here that's got a lot of different supplements in them. Some of them may be, very good. I believe some of them are. But why did I not continue taking them after a month or maybe 2 months? Because I didn't see or notice any change. Unfortunately, we've been created to be a society on convenience. However, when you're paying for something, you do want to know it's working. And if you can't measure anything, then most people are going to stop paying to purchase it. So I didn't notice any of those things. I didn't have a positive response. Now, that's not to say they weren't doing some good that maybe down the road would have manifested. That is certainly possible. But when you can take something and have results relatively quickly, in my case, it was 24 hours, 24 hours on energy and cravings. that was great. And then week to 2 weeks later, I'm noticing, wait a minute, my shirt's fitting a little different. My pants are fitting a little different. Now, it's not that I lost a bunch of weight yet. That took a little bit of time, but because of the inflammation that was it being impacted, that impacted things without the weight loss. But 3.5 months later, I was down 30 pounds, as you saw in that image I shared a bit ago, and I was stoked. I felt better. I was starting to look better. I had skin tags. I had no clue that was something from insulin resistance, and it was. They fell off. Didn't even know it had anything to do with insulin resistance. As I mentioned, I didn't know what insulin resistance was before I was introduced to this simple 3-step reset. And what happened once I started, I've been sharing with you, and it was truly incredible. And I've got story after story after story of other people that have had remarkable results. But let's get into what is insulin resistance. Again, my name is Steve Cloward. I'm here in Utah. I'd appreciate it if you'd type in the chat where you're from. So far, I'm not seeing anything in the chat, so I hope it is working correctly. I do see several people that have joined, and I appreciate you being here. And I'll hopefully be able to share some things with you that you weren't aware of that might be beneficial. But insulin resistance, what is it? One of the simplest ways I know to understand it is because once you understand this, a lot of what we talk about with metabolic health really will start making sense. Insulin is simply just a hormone. It's produced by your pancreas that acts as the key to unlock your cells, allowing glucose from the food we eat to enter, which provides energy. When we eat, especially foods high in carbs, your blood sugar rises, prompting your pancreas to release insulin. But in a healthy body, if you're insulin sensitive and if insulin's working efficiently, your glucose enters your cells. But when they're constantly bombarded with high levels of insulin, which the body produces every time we eat, then you're going to have problems. And not only carbs, but it's so difficult to eat healthy in the world we live in. Everything is highly processed, and those highly processed foods and carb-heavy diets, they begin to resist the insulin signal, which, again, your cells are locking out the insulin from entering. And then we get in this vicious cycle of the pancreas continuing to produce insulin, and once they don't allow the insulin in, then it's overproducing. So it's a vicious cycle. You eat frequently, especially processed and high-carb foods, as I mentioned, the blood sugar spikes repeatedly. Pancreas produces more of it, and then cells become resistant to the insulin signal. And as it continues to produce more, high levels of insulin prevent fat burning. So if you're actually eating pretty well and working out and still struggling to lose weight, that is definitely a sign you're insulin resistant. Insulin is essentially the signal. It's the key that tells those cells, hey, we've got energy here, and let it in. But it will not allow it in when your body becomes resistant. But when you're sensitive to insulin, then your system works as it was intended, and the cells respond and let the glucose in. Here's where things really start to change. Over time, those cells become less responsive, as I've mentioned, and then all sorts of problems happen. I've mentioned what happened to me. Now I want to share with you a few people that have had similar success, and there's thousands of them. But I'll show you what they looked like when they were insulin resistant, some of the other problems they were facing, and how they're doing after using this simple daily reset. No more high blood pressure, no more IBS, acid reflux, migraines, insomnia, down 2 pant sizes and 2 shirt sizes, and most importantly, no more meds. I didn't hit on my meds. I was taking 3 different meds, and I'm off all my meds. In fact, one of them wasn't to do with insulin resistance or high blood pressure or anything like that. I had been prescribed ADD for 9 years, and I had tried getting off it with my doctor's help, and it just never happened because every time I would cut back, it would throw me into a tailspin from a depression standpoint. And so I would never get off it. Well, after being on this simple daily reset uh, for 3 months, I thought, wait a minute, I'm going to try to cut my pills in half. And at the time, I was on 20 milligrams twice a day, and didn't talk to my doctor about this. I'm not suggesting that's what you do. That's what I chose to do. And I didn't notice anything. So a couple of weeks later, I stopped taking them. That was almost a year ago, and I haven't had one since. That was, to me, I mean, I had a lot of other great benefits from reversing insulin resistance, but and again, I can't tell you why I didn't have the same reaction when I tried to get off it when I wasn't taking the simple daily reset, but I didn't have any of the depression. I felt great, and I no longer, have that afternoon crash and that basically that chronic fatigue I used to live with. I feel excellent. Yes, there are many wolves in the white coats, 100%. And unfortunately, even the ones that aren't wolves are acting like wolves, and most of them don't know it. That's the sad part. They've been educated, and because of the way society looks at them as professionals, puts them up on pedestals, we just simply believe in them. And unfortunately, in many, that creates quite the ego. And so they're not even open to look at or hear about other situations or alternatives. Hey, thanks. Appreciate it. Michigan. Awesome. I'm in Utah. Anyhow, thanks for being here. But I want to give you a story regarding doctors while we're at it. In fact, two, if you don't mind. When I went to my last checkup, and the only reason I went is because my wife worked at my physician's office for 30 years, and I had been seeing that physician since I was 8. He was friends with my parents for decades, and he obviously hasn't been there for about 15 years, but one of the other docs that became an associate there, I became friends with because my wife was working there when he was there. In fact, geez, probably 25 years ago, he was a phlebotomist there. Then he went to medical school. Anyway, so I made it clear to him I'm not a good patient because I've gone down the rabbit holes over the last 7-8 years about a lot of things, but definitely about big pharma and medicine, American Medical Association, and who created that, yada, yada. And so he had prescribed me lisinopril for my high blood pressure. Now, I stopped taking it because of what I'd started to learn, and I was willing to just not take it. My blood pressure did stay high. Call me lazy, stupid, whatever you want. I did not do the things I know now, and I knew a little bit then that I could have done to improve that situation, but instead I just didn't do anything. And so when I did have that checkup, it's been 16 months ago, roughly, maybe close to 18. I had just started this simple daily reset 3 weeks earlier, and because of what I had learned about it and learned the science behind it, it's got 20 plus clinical studies. One's from the Cleveland Clinic. At the time, it was the #1 cardiovascular hospital in the world. It's #2 now, I believe. Checked out a lot of the other clinical studies, learned that this product's patented, and it's just the efficacy of it is off the charts. And it's been around for 30 years. And so I was like, Doc, I'm not going to take the meds. Well, then he gets on his computer, punches things in. And what he then told me, it bothered me, but I didn't take it personal because he's doing what he was trained to do. And that's the sad part. He told me I was 19% more likely to have a stroke if I didn't take my meds. That's crazy. Now, do I care to dig in to see if that's even true? No, because I also know they manipulate the blood pressure numbers on what's normal because they've changed over decades, just like it has with cholesterol. And that's the biggest scam of them all because we need cholesterol. Anyway, so I continued to take this protocol, and within 3.5 months, my blood pressure down to 120 over 74, and that's typically where it stands, give or take a few points. I had high cholesterol per the docs. It's in the healthy range, but I tend to want it on the higher of the quote healthy range. Again, everything changed for me. So the second example, this one is a little crazier, and I'll try to be as brief as I can, but hopefully give you the same impact. I'm a pretty open and authentic guy. I don't hide anything about who I am, my flaws and all, because I've got plenty. But I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease in 1987 and had a small bowel resection. I had 16 inches of my small bowel cut out due to ulceration and perforation. And that's when I was introduced to opiates, pain medication, and became addicted. And I danced with the devil with those damn pills for 15 years. And most of that time, I didn't need them, of course. And I was taking way more than prescribed. And you can imagine what was done to get more than what the doctor was prescribing. And a lot of times they weren't prescribing any because I didn't have a flare up going on. And anyway, you name the pill, I was taking it. And thank the good Lord, I was a very high functioning addict. That is not to say there wasn't a lot of wreckage taking place with, situations with family and isolation and whatever, even though they definitely knew what was going on, making up excuses why I didn't feel good at times to go to this family function or that kind of stuff was real. But when it came to work and things like that, as long as I had my medications, I was functioning. They metabolize different for me, and they don't make me loopy or groggy. But as your body gets more acclimated, I lost the word that's more appropriate for that, your tolerance level goes up. When I was driving to meet a buddy one afternoon to meet him at the golf course, hit some golf balls, my body went numb from my neck down. I can't really explain what took place. I don't even really understand it, honestly, but I could see my car. Now, granted, I'm still driving. I'm in my car, but I could see it off the side of the road parked. It wasn't wrecked or anything, and me in it. Am I saying I was in it dead? No, I don't even know. That's all I remember, but my body went numb from my neck down. By the time I got to the golf course about 2 miles down the road, I was a mess. My buddy saw me because I could drive right up to the front of the driving range. And this time I was in tears. I was tripping out. So I decided, you know what? Come with me. Let's drive over to my gastroenterologist's house, because I was pretty good friends with him. His son had worked for me for a couple of years. And he had a party going on, but he spoke to me through the speaker, and I told him what was going on best I could. He said, well, let me call an internist. Which he did. That internist was out of town. So he told me he'd call me back once he heard from him. And he got back to me later that evening and said, yeah, he's called you in 8 OxyContin because he'll be back in 3 days and he'll see you then. Well, I hadn't even heard of OxyContin. This would have been in the early to mid 90s. So OxyContin was pretty new to the market. Well, here I was literally scared straight, ready to do whatever it took. I'd been sick and tired of being sick and tired. And the chase to try to always have medication. And that's not an easy thing to do, because thank the good Lord, I never went to heroin, even though, opiates are basically, it's just synthetic heroin. Is what it is. But I could never do that for whatever reason. I'm so grateful to that, because who knows what would have taken place or if I'd even be alive today. Anyway, so when I see this doc, he says, oh, yeah, you're just self-medicating for depression. And this wasn't without a thorough questioning, answering, meeting or anything like that. It was very brief, and he prescribed me Wellbutrin, sent me on my way, gave me more OxyContin for 30 days, and said, we'll taper you off. Now, I've learned a lot since then, and you do not taper off anything as an addict. Now, there might be some things that medically, from a safety standpoint, they claim you need to. I don't know of anything where that is true. I'm not saying that is a fact, but you don't taper off pain meds. You don't slowly stop being an alcoholic. It's just you got a cold turkey. You got to stop. So the problem that took place when that happened was now I'm having a medical professional tell me there is a problem besides, my Crohn's disease being the reason when it's flared up to take these. So in my brain, I'm thinking, oh, green light, I need these, it's okay, which is totally ridiculous. But that's how my addict mind worked. And so I continued that battle for another 4.5 years when I finally, just like health, got educated enough to understand that if you want to stop being an addict of whatever the issue is, food, sex, gambling, drugs, alcohol, you got to figure out what the root is beneath the surface to why you're doing those things, because there's always a root cause. So through some counseling and stuff, I figured that out, resolved some things, and that was 2008 since I had my last pain pill. And so the same thing goes with health. The root cause of most chronic disease is insulin resistance, and it has an impact on so many things I can't even count. Pretty much you think of it, but we're taught and doctors are trained they're chronic. So once you're diagnosed with diabetes, type 2 diabetics, you're on insulin the rest of your lives. There could be nothing further from the truth. I've got tons of diabetics. In fact, let me play a short video here of Claudia. She has a pretty great story. Let's hear what she has to say and what happened to her.
At age 50, my doctor kept wanting me to take a statin. I didn't want to. And finally, he talked me into trying Lipitor. It was new on the market. And within 3 weeks, I woke up one morning and I did not have legs. I could not stand. It turned out to be neuromuscular disorder. I gained like 59 pounds in 3 weeks. That's when I became type 2 diabetic. The blood sugars went sky high and they never came back down. I wanted to die. I was hurting so bad. Of course, I was on metformin. And then another year after that, I started the Trulicity. I met a new doctor that I had never seen before. And she walked into the room and abruptly said, your A1C is 10.4. And I came home. I was sitting back in my bedroom and I was very depressed, very upset. I picked up my iPad and I was looking on Facebook and someone had posted a TikTok video talking about this protocol. And I said, what have I got to lose? I ordered it that day. I started on it on October the 11th last year. By December, I had to quit taking the Trulicity because my blood sugar was high. I had lost 37 pounds and my A1C was 5.1. I felt so much better too. I'm off all medicine. My cholesterol was always like 386. Now, as of April, it was 226. I'm just so thankful.
So that's Claudia. She's got quite a story, and I've got hundreds just like this. Now, even medical doctors, there are some that have woken up to what's going on. And here's another short clip, less than about a minute, of Dr. Hendricks talking about she was part of the problem, what it's done for her, what it's done for her diabetic brother who was in the ICU, and her 72-year-old mother who had MS who is now playing pickleball.
I am that doctor everybody wants to say. I went to my doctor and they tried to give me medications. I was the one doing it. That's what I knew how to do. I knew how to actually write the prescriptions and end up needing prescriptions for the side effects and the drug interactions. That's what I knew. It wasn't until I woke up and I was like, wait a minute, there's got to be more than this. In a couple years, I'm going to be 50. I don't want this life. I don't want to look like these people. I have a family history of type 2 diabetes. And so I actually got certified in lifestyle medicine. That's about going after the root causes of conditions. And I started going on social media, and that's how I got connected with Family Read, who said, hey, have you heard about these products that can help your people like you're trying to tell them? Of course, I thought she was just trying to sell me something. But when I was able to use these products and get people to latch onto lifestyle changes, I saw people's A1Cs come down much quicker than I was able to do for 20 years. And when you actually see these results, it became a no-brainer. I started using it. I was able to get off my blood pressure medicine for 2 months. I was able to take my brother out the ICU with his uncontrolled type 2 diabetes and put him on these products and got his sugars down to where he didn't need his insulin, his Trulicity, his metformin. I had my 72-year-old mom who has MS, who's bouncing around playing pickleball, no longer with her legs dragging and wearing her high heels. I'm enjoying what these products are doing with me and my family.
Pretty amazing, huh? That's really how great this protocol is, and it does impact literally 95% of the people on it. Everybody's response can be different, obviously, because our biology is different, our bodies are different. But what I mean there is just the time. If I know some of the type 2s I've worked with that we're seeing changes in 2 weeks. I have one gentleman, Brad, who it took 9 months, but by 9 months, he was totally off all of his insulin resistance. I've got an image that I want to show you. Now, be prepared. It's a little graphic. When I say graphics, because it's the bottom of a foot that has horrific diabetes, and how this gentleman spent from January to June at $180,000 on surgeries and treatments and very little improvement. And then with 3.5 months of simply drinking this simple daily protocol, this is what it looked like. January 2025, June of 25, slight improvement, still kind of ugly. And they had told him that's the best they could do. And so they were talking about having to amputate his foot. Just by chance, he heard about this simple daily protocol. It's all natural, no contraindications with any medications. Started on it 3.5 months later, hole is completely gone. It's crazy. Dennis is one of my favorite. This guy was 282 pounds in kidney failure. In the ICU, his blood pressure was 247 over 191. A few months later, he's down 90 pounds off 8 medications, kidney failure. Kidneys improved by 12%. Feels great. I mean, and these go on and on and on. This company is so amazing, this product. They've got studies by University of Sydney. I mentioned earlier, also the Cleveland Clinic. But it talks about how just this one simple packet here, which is a 7-fiber matrix, controls glucose spikes by 20 to 28%. That's a huge improvement. So it's truly amazing what this does. And once we become insulin sensitive again, the body can work the way it's supposed to. On the screen, you're seeing the simple difference between being sensitive and resistant. On the left side, your cells are insulin sensitive. And just remember, insulin's like the key, and your cells have the locks. So when those locks respond properly, the insulin, the glucose can move out of your bloodstream and into your cells, where it's then used for energy. That's what we want. Your body is responding appropriately to insulin. But on the other side, when you're resistant, when you have insulin resistance, your cells are basically locked down. They will not let the glucose in. So your pancreas compensates, produces more insulin to try to get the same job done. And your blood sugar could even look normal for a period of time while your insulin is already elevated, and your pancreas may be working overtime to keep the glucose under control. But that's why I think we need to look beyond just one blood sugar reading. You know, it's also crazy if you think of all the different things that insulin resistance impacts from a health standpoint. There's a whole lot of them. Let's just say that you had 5 or 6 of these. How many Tic Tacs would your doctor have you taking? And those Tic Tacs are not to cure the problem. But no matter what is on that list that you may or may not be dealing with, like my case, there was 7 different ones. I wasn't on, skin tags. Obviously, there's no medication for that. Fatigue. But one simple drink has an impact on all of those things, and a significant impact. Because like I mentioned earlier, the stories can go on and on and on. LM55, I appreciate you being here. Jim and Tom, Gary, Tiffany, appreciate your being here. I've been talking about insulin resistance. That's what I consistently talk about on my social media. What I'm going to start continuing to go live and discuss to try to educate people. Because when I took this and when it had the impact it did on me, it's been so incredible that I feel like I have to share it with people. Because in America, over 88% of American adults have some form of insulin resistance, and most of them don't even know what that is, so they don't know that they have it. And their medical professionals are not talking about it. And I dare bet most of them don't even know what it is. If they do, they're trained not to discuss it. I'll bet they don't know because they don't want to teach them those kind of things. Because if they did and they knew what the root cause was, I think there's enough ethical people out there that are wearing white coats that they would help people that were dealing with these things rather than managing symptoms. Managing symptoms causes more problems when you have tic tacs managing the symptom. That's when years later you have other problems. So I appreciate those of you that are here, and I look forward to interacting with you again. If you have any comments or are curious about the Simple Daily Reset, the protocol I take, send me a message, or you can just jump on over to either my profile, or you can go right here to that Feel Great special and learn more about it. There's information on that page. It'll teach you more about it. Then if you go to the link from that page, you'll be able to see the product and read all about it. If you'd like specific, say you have a specific health problem, if you'd like me to send you maybe somebody's testimonial that was dealing with a specific problem you might have, send me a direct message and I'll be happy to send anything you'd like that. Again, or you can just jump over to my profile on really any of my social profiles have that link that you can see there. So you can learn more there. But again, I appreciate you being here. My name is Steve Cloward. And if you're over 40 and you're dealing with high blood pressure, stubborn weight, high blood sugar, low energy, fatigue, inflammation, stick around, okay? Because we're going to talk about what may actually be happening underneath all of that. And there is one root cause that's a major factor that Dr. Benjamin Bickman, the author of Why We Get Sick, this book right here, talks about as the hidden epidemic at the root cause of most chronic disease. Now, if you're just joining us, I'm here in Utah. I'd love to hear where you're from. Quick question. How many of you know somebody dealing with high blood pressure, diabetes, pre-diabetes, fatty liver, PCOS, ED, inflammation, any of the itises, arthritis, insulin resistance? Type yes in the chat. Anybody over 50? Anyone taking high blood pressure meds? Anyone been told their numbers are getting worse even though they don't think they're eating terribly? Well, it's just 18 months ago that I was insulin resistant, and I weighed 208 pounds, was pre-diabetic, had high cholesterol, skin tags. My sleep was terrible. I was getting up 2 to 3 times a night just to go to the bathroom. It was miserable. I had fatigue. Thing that frustrated me the most is when my grandkids would come over, I didn't have the energy to run around and play with them, enjoy it the way I wanted to. That was really a big driver behind me figuring out there's got to be an option to help improve this situation without extreme diet or extreme exercise, mind you, because those are things, frankly, I don't enjoy. But you can see now my blood pressure is 120/74. My sleep is so much better. I might get up once, about 3 or 4 days a week. Yeah, there's 3 or 4 I'm sleeping through the night, and that has been a game changer. Because it's one thing to have fatigue anyway, but then not sleeping well is only compounding and making that so much worse. But I'm here in Utah, and I spend a lot of time talking about insulin resistance and metabolic health. because I became passionate about this and wanted to learn what was causing all these problems. I mean, I know that our food system is horrible. I know that everything's poison, basically. Ultra processed food's terrible for us. All the fiber is stripped out of food when it's processed. And this little packet here is a 7-fiber matrix that is incredible. It helps with satiety. It helps with gut microbiome. It coats the food because you take it right before you eat, puts the fiber back in the diet. It improves glucose spikes by 20 to 28%. It's truly an incredible product. And it, along with the other packet that is an yerba mate tea, when they work synergistically together, that's why we have customers all over the world who have improved any one of the quote diseases you're seeing on the screen, if not eliminated. And many, many have eliminated most of the things you're seeing there. I mean, neuropathy stories, tons of them. Improved energy is definitely one of them. Type 2 diabetics, absolutely. Tons of them off insulin. PCOS, fatty liver, high cholesterol, weight is huge because that fiber, it works in a way that if you struggle with overeating, for example, it makes you feel full because the patent it's got on it. And in fact, this product here was created over 30 years ago. For some of you that might be closer to my age, you may remember the name Rexall Drugs. They were the company that actually created that originally. And the company that owns it now bought out that part of Rexall's business. And that came obviously with the patents. And they've even improved it. But it's an incredible product. And it has literally changed my life and thousands of other people. And I'm on a mission to change 1 million people's lives around the world. And I know this simple daily protocol is what can do that without a doubt. It's got studies from the Cleveland Clinic, University of Sydney, Brigham Young University, Stanford, UNLV, and many, many others. The efficacy behind the product is top notch, and it really does an incredible job. Well, what is insulin resistance? Think of your cell, the insulin's a hormone, and the pancreas produces it into the bloodstream and to help push glucose into the cells. But when your cells become insulin resistant, it doesn't let the glucose in. So when you're burning energy, you're actually burning sugars and carbs because you're not able to access and burn the fat when the cells are locked down. So insulin's the key. And when we can get insulin to open up the cell, then the body can function the way it's intended to function. One other thing about this simple protocol is it's all natural, plant-based. And there's no contraindications with any medications, which is a huge deal because when people are insulin resistant, most people are on medications, not just 1, 2, sometimes 3, 4. I've got a lady named Sherry who was on 17 medications, is no longer on any medications. The results are really incredible. In fact, James has a great story. Listen to what James and what he experienced after he used this protocol and reversed his insulin resistance.
For 15 years. I was overweight for 25 years. I was an eating machine. I would hit the refrigerator, eat something. An hour later, eat something. My doctor wanted to put me on another med. He wanted to put me on a statin. And that was the line in the sand for me. I was like, no, I'm already on enough meds because of the metformin I was on. Not to mention 10 milligrams of acidophil for high blood pressure. doctor. I'd already been to every vitamin store in the world looking for supplements. And here I am, 120 pounds later. I went from an A1C of 9.2 to 6.2 in 3 months. Now I'm at a 5.4. Cholesterol is down. It has changed my life. The energy that I have is incredible. I feel better than I was before. This is not something that you keep for yourself. This is something you share with your family. You share with your friends. Because you cannot understand the quality of life you'll gain by returning yourself back to good metabolic health. Give yourself a 90 days.
That's just one of many, many stories just like Jim. And if you're struggling and if this sounds like something that you're looking for that could change your health, if you're curious, just jump on over to my bio. You can learn more about it and send me a message if there's any questions that you've got. I'm happy to answer any questions you've got. So if what I'm talking about sounds like what you've been looking for and you're ready to try it, here's exactly what to do. Just click the link in my bio. That's where you'll get my preferred pricing. And when you get there, you'll see the options to order. If you choose to order, choose subscribe. That way you'll get the savings. You'll save $20 to $25. Now, if you're like some people, and like I definitely used to be, I don't like subscriptions per se because I have to be in control. But the company makes it very, very easy. That link is direct to the manufacturer. You're not buying from me. But you can go into your account at any time. You can change the subscription. You can cancel it. You can skip next month. You can change the date of the next shipping, whatever you'd like. But just do yourself a favor and save the $20 to $25. When I say 20 to 25, that's because $10 is a savings, and then the difference is the shipping price. So that varies depending on where you live. But I appreciate those that have been here and joining today. And I'll be back again tomorrow and look forward to seeing you here. Take care and have a great day.